all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a debut author and the author of the book, The Chronicles of Ordi, and no other than Mr. Alex Zenk.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Alex, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. Name's Alex. I am a pastor by trade. I also do teaching and other hospice type work on the side, but primarily I've been a preacher for the last 5 years. I come from corporate IT. Been a big nerd my entire life. I love reading. I love fantasy. I love sci-fi. And now that I got a little bit of downtime, I figured I'd write a book or a book series. And now it's kind of sprouting into multiple books and different series and different characters and things like that I've got planned out and ready to get to put them on paper soon.
Mr. Alex Zing, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. And beyond maps and magic, what's the emotional essence of your world? What makes it feel uniquely alive?
That's an interesting question. Uniquely alive. I would say it's not the standard good versus evil trope that people would read within like a Tolkien or a C.S. Lewis type book. Um, but I try to be very distinct, making the bad very bad and the good as good as possible with flaws. But to make it unique, I mean, I think anybody who puts pen to paper has the ability to spin a story and to tell it. And I think they're all unique in that aspect. But the one thing that I think I would hope that draws people to this book is it is a throwback to classical quest style fantasy novels that were pretty popular for many years and have really in probably the last 15 or 20 years have fallen away from the wayside, and now we find a lot more epic fantasies and different types of storylines like that. And so I wanted to have a throwback to this quest style fantasy, and I think I at least I hope I nailed it with this book. But I did enjoy writing it. I think it's great. It's got a lot of good reviews, and I think it's exactly what the world needs at this moment.
You nailed it, Mr. Alex. And again, congratulations for that you. The lost gems are not just power sources. What deeper price or responsibility comes with wielding them?
Well, in the story, the gems are a tool that a mage will use to essentially bind part of their essence to this gem, and it allows them to have a deeper connections with the arcane magic that's in the book. And so, if you have these gems, they really could act as like a multiplier or an amplifier for the magic that's already existent in the world. And so, if you have somebody who's got one of the gems, then and they have it maybe crafted into a weapon. That weapon is probably going to be more deadly. It's going to be faster, or it could just be like a staff, like if it's a mage type situation. I don't leave the gems to any single particular group of people in my story because I have different characters of different classes use the gems throughout different points. And so, book one is really the lost gems. They've been mined away. They've been forgotten about. The original stash that they had is gone, and they now send Orty and this group, we call them the Brotherhood, out into this adventure into the wild, looking for these gems, and of course all the evil in that. But yeah, I think the gems themselves really act um, to help amplify that the magical sense, if you would, of the world.
Magical sense indeed. What morally grey forces or fictions threaten the Brotherhood's quest? Who believe they are the hero?
Well, um, I think Xerxes, the bad guy, could pretend that he's the hero. He thinks that what he's done and what has been done to him is, um, you know, it's a negative thing, and so he's seeking that retribution, that justice back for those actions committed against him, that essentially revenge, maybe. But really, I tried to paint the characters either really good or really bad. I do have some gray characters that pop up in book one, and I have to think through on book two. Not too many in book two, and then I might have a few more in book three. But generally, these characters are very small in how they actually interact with the main characters, and so really, you can't deceive or decide which one or the other if they're good or bad. I do provide some insight into book two where it answers questions from book one around a mysterious person that's present within the Dwarven kingdom, and he kind of shows up and then he's just gone. And so book two kind of answers and tells that story of him. And so he's, you know, probably would be my most grayest character between in book two. Book one, I've got a bard who is definitely an interesting character. I try to keep him, kind of in that in between state, so where readers don't know whether he's good or bad. So
Mr. Alex, is magic in or the inherent learned gifted by the gems or something else? How does this shape society?
well, with magic in the world, in the first chapter, I kind of give a small bit of history to it, not a ton, but a little bit of history to it, and um the storyline really kind of progresses to the fact that magic is starting to wean from the world, and we're going to start to really see some of that take place in the last part of book two. Book one, you probably might catch whispers of it, but it's not really explicitly written in that. There's a few things, like I said, that kind of allude to it, but book two, you're going to start to see that shift. So when it comes to magic, it's not necessarily something that's learned, but it's something that's you're born with, and you have this gift, and you come about at a certain age, and magic is able to be done by that character. And so, in Orty, he um, tests and gets into the Mage Academy and goes through his training. And then I've got a chapter where he does some apprentice work, and he works under different masters. And there's a couple different side stories in that chapter. And then, and he moves on. But um, magic is not something I try to overuse, because obviously, like, I can just be like, already cast a spell and everybody's dead. That doesn't make for good writing. And so, or if everybody's casting spells that everybody's dead, nobody's going to live, and you don't really have a good story yet. So there's only certain points where magic is really heavily demonstrated, and it is by only certain characters within the story.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Alex. Interesting novel. How does trauma, duty, or shared secrets bind these unlikely allies into a brotherhood?
So the quest centers around the gems, but they're going to find that really the commonality, especially in book two and later. Book one is I've got some of it, but they really they're kind of sent. first of all, I should back up a little bit and say this. Um, the original Brotherhood that sets out on this journey, um, after a period, some of them leave and go back because they're requested to help defend the kingdom from this enemy army that's been marching through. And so two of the characters leave, and then that leaves Orty, his brother Verdon. There's Mira the Poshhound, Nimue, who is a druid elf, male druid elf, and then and so it's, yeah, just those three. And then they stumble into essentially the gnome kingdom and find that they have a lot in common with the gnomes, and so then a gnome is now going to kind of carry on with it. So the quest in of itself is binding to the essence that these individuals here are going to be the ones that are going to attempt to save the world, and so that's kind of where that driving notion from the start of the story through the end.
Mr. Alex, describe a key relationship where opposing worldviews create tension and unexpected growth.
So um I, I don't necessarily get too much into it in book one. So mind you, like a lot of things that I'm working on and is spanned in a trilogy, and so book two and book three, I'm about 75% done with book two, which I hope to have into my publisher by the end of summer. And if I were to say, like, who in the story has conflicting worldviews, we're going to find that some of the things that we may have assumed in book one may not necessarily be the same or true entirely. So, for instance, like the king of the dwarves may have a different approach and wants to do things differently than Orty will, and Orty is going to want to do things differently than that. And so, there's going to be a little bit of rifling and tension in that to figure out what's the best route forward. But that's really, you know, I guess if you want to even compare that within the bad guys that I have, the evil characters, um, they're just flat out, the worst of the worst, and so they are destroying everything, killing everybody, and they have no remorse for anything, and so they don't care. And but the good guys do, and that's where you get the moral basis for the story between those.
Who bears the weight of command and what personal sacrifice does leadership demand, Mr. Alex?
So in the book, Nimue takes the charge um, because he kind of forces himself into a high level meeting and then kind of circulates himself around these gems that are lost. And so when the parties commission, the Brotherhood's commissioned, they not directly assign one person to be the lead, but Nimue, who is the only elf in the story for now, um, has kind of the lead because he knows more than Orty and the rest. But as time moves, that leadership shifts from Nimue to Orty, and Orty then becomes kind of the charging force behind where the Brotherhood's going to go, what they're going to do, and all of that. So, I think Nimue, at least I didn't put too much of a weight or burden on him as a character. Looking or working through his kind of moments of where he's like, okay, it's time to pack up, it's time to leave, it's time to do this, whatever it may be. But Orty, I think, is going to take a different approach because the character of his nature is very empathetic towards other people, and he wants to serve and do things for everybody, and not just his own people. And so that's where we're going to see some significant differences too between character wise in books two and three.
Mr. Alex, as an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, my short term goal is to finish book two. Like I said, I'm about 65,000 words in, and that puts me at about 75% done, give or take. Um, I'm pretty close to the end, and so I'm just kind of really trying to, I don't want to say add filler, but kind of beef up the back end of this and throw a few extra twists and turns for the readers because why not? But my short term is to have that done this summer, publish it, and then book 3 done by next year and publish it. And from that, have that as a trilogy is kind of my flagship trilogy, and then start working on another book series that I have in mind that will follow that.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Alex, and looking forward for more and more success. What will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be an author like you?
Hmm. Well, I wouldn't say I'm accomplished yet, but my advice, and this was what was told to me, I stumbled into a writers group in July of last year, and so we are actually all going to a conference, Imaginarium, here in July in Kentucky, and so we're all and a bunch of us are speaking there. I've got a panel that I've got in a workshop that I'm hosting, and so the advice was when I showed up first day, I'm like, I don't know any of these people in this group, and I hand them my manuscript, and they look at me and they're like, this is great, this is wonderful, you have a story you should write. And so from that point on, it was the goal of trying to do a chapter a week, it's about 3,000 to 4,000 words. And I got 2 young kids at home, so I juggle kids and wife and all that kind of stuff. But the best advice is to just sit down and write, even if it's 25 words in a day. Write a sentence, write a paragraph, put something down on paper, and eventually you will get to your whole story.
Mr. Alex, thank you so much for your advice. And can you share a book that influenced your journey as a writer?
Then probably the biggest one is Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. That was the book I read when I was in junior high and high school. It was one of the best, stories in my opinion that I've read. I go back and revisit those books on a somewhat regular basis, whether I listen to them on audio or actually physically read them. On my library, I have all sorts of different versions of it. I've got special edition, collector's editions. I've got all the extra Tolkien books, and everything that he's had published since his death. And so, as an inspiration, that his writing to me is the style I want it to be. And it was what's great is my publisher saw that when I wrote this story, and my editor came through and she made this comparison through autocrit, and it compared my story to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and it was like an 86% similarity in terms of how the stories are written. And so, I mean, you read the synopsis of the book, and it's like, if you like the Lord of the Rings, if you like the New World, the Wheel of Time, what is it, New Spring, I think is book one, and there's another book that we mentioned, then you're gonna love this book. And so those were inspirational to me writing this, and I hope that when people read it, they'll see that. And so far, I've had a lot of people reach back to me and say they really enjoy reading it. They think it's fantastic, and now my goal is to get more people to have share that love with it in reviews on Amazon or Goodreads or whatever it might be.
I love Wheel of Time. It so happen Amazon can sell it.
Yeah.
It's so disappointing, but well, we will read the book again or the books again. What sequence poured onto the page with unexpected intensity? Did it change the plot?
um there was a time when I had kind of a writer's block in book one, and I I don't generally suffer from insomnia, but I was just really restless one night, and so I left the bed, came out to the living room, grabbed my laptop, and I sat down and I just started looking at my story, because I was kind of at a point where I'm like, I really don't have what I want, and I need to finish this. I was like about 50% done. And so this particular night, I wrote from like 1 a.m. until 5 a.m. and I wrote like 5 or 6 thousand words. I wrote 2 full chapters in this short period of time. And then like those are right in the middle of book one. And I look back on those and I'm like, these are where I'm really happy with. Like I feel like that night changes the entire scope of the story because had I not put all that effort into it, I wouldn't be launching this book just yet. I would still have to go through editing and all the other stuff with the publisher. So that I think is the point when things kind of changed in the story.
Mr. Alex, how you deal with mental block?
Um, I love listening to classical music. Um, and so I usually have music on when I'm writing. If I'm not listening to music, then I don't quite feel like I have the mental fortitude to really commit to writing. I gotta have music, gotta have some background noise, and so like I'll sit upstairs with my laptop and do it. But when it comes to like a writer's block, um, there's a number of things I can do. I start outlining another story. I can start reviewing, or for like book two right now, I had kind of a dry point about three. Maybe it was a little longer than that. Maybe about a month and a half, 2 months ago, where I just didn't write anything. And if I hadn't done that, I would have been done with book two by now. But I had other things going on in my life, and that really took my attention away from writing, and I don't like that. And so, I make a point to sit down every night and put something on paper. And even if I don't like it, I can come back and edit, revise, or change it. And so I'm not necessarily concerned if I'm just writing and it comes out to be more gibberish than it is an actual story. So, I'll pick up other books. I'll sit and listen to audiobooks. I cycle through audiobooks on a regular basis. Um, I'm not a, as of now, and I hate this because years ago I used to be a big physical book reader. I would listen, or I'd read books all the time as a way to allow my imagination to run. But with two small kids and I'm essentially working three different careers and writing, I don't get the time to just sit and luxuriously read. But if I have roadblocks, I'll grab a classic fantasy novel off my shelf. I'll read through maybe a few chapters, get some insight, get some character development, get some depth from the author, and then see, is there something I can do with with that new knowledge. And so that would be the one thing I would do beyond just trying to set the right environment for me to write in.
What real life experience, myth, or a piece of art planted the first seed for this world?
So in my early 20s, I was a huge gamer and I still play a little bit today, but not regularly. But I used to be a big World of Warcraft fan. And I played that from 2004 until probably 2010, 2012, somewhere in that period. So I played a good 6 to 8 years of this game. I had a lot of time committed, and I've picked it up periodically since, but not to the scope that I've had um, originally. So the first character I created in the story was a dwarf named Orty, and he was a hunter in the game, which is obviously different than the Chronicles of Orty, where he's a mage. Um, and I've got some ideas that I can actually kind of spin the class of a hunter a little bit within my world of Asheros. I can have another book series, but it's not going to be the same name of um, the name not going to be the same characters, so they're going to be different, but they'll have that same kind of throwback to the World of Warcraft kind of era. So that's really the biggest motivator that I've taken from is using that character name and kind of drawing that life or that imagery out of that game.
Well, Mr. Alex, again, thank you so much for sharing your novel to the world. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and for sure my book 101 review in fifth season as well, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. Mr. Alex, if the Brotherhood could speak directly to your audience after the final page, what the truth would they share?
I think first they would thank the people who read the story, read about their adventure, read about their trials and tribulations. They would certainly thank the audience for that. And for those who are maybe on the edge of should I buy this book or should I not, um, they would definitely encourage, I would hope, to do that because they want their story to be read. And I think any character desires that. And so if you were to take those people out of the story, make them real life characters, real life people, they would certainly be very appreciative, but also encouraging for more people to get into this type of classical fantasy. And like I said in the beginning, I think this is a novel that's perfect for our particular time within literature and within the world history and all that. I think this book sets itself apart from all of the other chart topping fantasy novels that are out there because they're all spice and romance and kind of a mix of all sorts of different things, and they're not traditionally fantasy. And so, I think the characters would certainly encourage more people to hear about this, to share this, and to thank the people who did read and appreciated the work.
Mr. Alex Zenk, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your debut book?
Yeah, you can pick it up on Amazon. Just search Chronicles of Ordy. You can. It's going to be eventually on all of the other platforms. Um, it for whatever reason, Barnes and Noble and all those other places are slow to get in, but it's on Amazon. You can order it there, and it'll come to you within a couple days. You can follow me on social media. It's either I'm by Alex Zenk or AP Zenk, Zenk. Um, my website is www.apzenk.com, and you can go and follow that, which I'm starting to do a monthly blog to encourage people, again, to kind of build this community of readers for this novel. So go grab it. You won't be disappointed. It is a good cozy fireside read. You will have nostalgia if you are even appreciative of fantasy novels. This will certainly satisfy your needs.
So, Mr. Alex, is this will be the next Game of Thrones?
Oh, I'd hope so.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Alex Singh, because if you support him, more and more and more empowering novels like this to come. So, Mr. Alex, thank you so much for your time.
Yep, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Modicon people, see you soon.